and opening to changing mind and heart because of George Floyd. And so I do think there's a difference, and what that difference is, I don't want to assume I know, but I think there's something, at least for me, that horrific video of the murder of a man, a 9-minute video watching his slow and agonizing death. It's like watching a Calvary. You can't look away, and I think that that moment, that visual moment of watching him die like that, it's like looking at a cross. It's like looking at the death of Christ on a cross, and that's a powerful image, and I think there's something to that, and that's why people have to watch it. They have to see it. You can't not see that.
Now, Father, in our line of work, Shawn and I's line of work, we're very familiar with the north-south divide that we have here in our city. I'm somebody who didn't spend a lot of time in southern Dallas for many years when I first moved here. Until recently, I spent a lot of time in southern Dallas. It sounds like, you're having a lot of people that are having an eye-opening experience in your congregation, kind of similar to when I, started really exploring and diving into southern Dallas. What are you telling your congregation? Like, how can you help them to understand their role in this current situation, this current state in our nation? What can they individually do to understand more, or to help the situation get better?
Well, I think there's an opportunity now, hopefully, to begin a conversation and to begin a journey of learning and enlightenment, to discover a history beyond our collective mythologies that allows us to reckon with our past, right? And I talk about my experience of, I considered myself a really enlightened, progressive guy when it came to race, but I'd never read James Baldwin. I'd never heard about redlining. I'd never heard about Ta-Nehisi Coates and these great voices, right? And so I had to intentionally seek these people out and learn from them, because I didn't get it in school. I didn't get it in media today, right? And so I had to seek out and learn for myself to grasp mentally American history as it really is, and once you learn, then you can process what's going on more productively, and I think that sort of that enlightenment is the first step toward the policy changes and the societal changes we all need to fight to achieve in order to truly make this a better country, right? And so I think this is an invitation, and leaders like myself should encourage people to take that step toward greater knowledge, right? And that was my experience, and I think we need to multiply that. And so that's what I'm telling people. Read, study, investigate our national history and the history of this city. Because the North Dallas, South Dallas, the way Dallas is the way Dallas is shaped today is a direct result of racial bias and the economic decisions and the development decisions and the political decisions which issue from that bias, and the consequences. You could drive 10 minutes and discover them, right? And and we need to know that, and our our simple history, our simplistic history, I should say, it is not sufficient to teach us, and so education is a huge part of this process.
This is Deconstructing Dallas. We are talking to Father Josh Whitfield from St. Rita Catholic Church. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit more into the conversation regarding some of the disparities that Father Josh just mentioned. So hang with us through the break. This is Deconstructing Dallas. Shawn Williams, Ryan Trimble. We'll be right back.
Late 1950s, Billy Graham preached once, "The one great answer to our racial problem in America is for men and women to be converted to Christ." Now that's fine advice, and I'm all for it. But there were more Americans in church, especially in the South in the 1950s, than at any other time in our history, when most white Christians didn't have a thing to say about Jim Crow. Not a single thing. There is a problem in refusing to admit the problem. A problem saying in the face of the problems of our country that all we need is Jesus. Because one, I don't think Jesus himself would say that, and two, it's hypocrisy.
Welcome back, Deconstructing Dallas. Shawn Williams, Ryan Trimble. We are with Father Josh Whitfield, pastor at St. Rita Church, St. Rita Catholic Church here in Dallas. Father Josh, in your Pentecost homily, you talked about political and economic decisions that stacked the deck against George Floyd before he was ever born. And for some of our listeners, they may disagree with you, they may not about that sentiment, but some might be ignorant about what that even means. So can you explain what you mean when you talk about those political and economic decisions?
Sure. What I meant was really the horrible history and the horrible story of redlining, which disfigured black neighborhoods all across the country. In 2019, in December 2019, there was an exhibit in City Hall about redlining in Dallas. I think it was only that month, and I think it should go around to every school in the city, to be honest. But in the 1930s, with the New Deal, the FHA was established, and the Homeowners Loan Corporation was established. But they mapped out every city in the country, and they said these neighborhoods are desirable, these are a little bit risky, these are undesirable. And the undesirable segments of the neighborhood were designated in red, hence redlining. And they were black neighborhoods. And so people in those neighborhoods couldn't get insurance, they couldn't get mortgages, which led to massive, divestment in those parts of the city, which caused property values to decline, properties themselves to decline, people to leave those parts of the city. And the families that did struggle to stay in the city, in those neighborhoods, were under such immense stress simply to pay the bills that families begin to break apart. And so you see these huge swaths of American cities decimated. And by the time in the late 60s, when redlining was declared unconstitutional, the damage had been done, right? And so with the crime that you see in cities, instead of seeing the economic causes of broken families and depressed neighborhoods, what do? We talk about law and order, right? This is Nixon in the late 60s and things like that. And we are today still shaped by those decisions, right? In every city in America and in Dallas. And that's a history we're completely ignorant of, right? And so when I talked about political decisions that stacked the deck against George Floyd before he was born, I meant that. But then also, before that, you've got the premature death of Reconstruction in the South. You've got the rise of the Klan in the 1920s. You've got the white primaries in Texas that weren't unconstitutional in 1944. This huge sort of web of racial bias and political decisions stemming from that racial bias, which we are still living with today, and that's what I meant.
Father, in 2015, I had the chance to work with former Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings, and I got to go to a lot of these different communities with him. And what I saw across these communities is that the local church is really, the focal point of these communities, and is carrying a lot of the weight, the spiritual weight, pretty much everything from services to you name it. What are you hearing from your fellow faith leaders across our city about the current situation?
Well, I was texting with a colleague, a Baptist colleague, just the other day, and we're trying to figure out what to do, especially for we white pastors, because we are acutely aware that our task now is to listen and to learn and to support and not to lead. And so I think that's what we are at this precise moment trying to figure out how best to do, right? We pastors need to get together and know each other better. We need to talk and listen, and then invite our people to talk and listen too. And so I think it would be a great achievement if, in my parish, for example, if we could start that conversation and allow people to a safe space to have that conversation about race, and then to establish those friendships with other faith communities that socioeconomically and racially are not like us. That is what I hope you see in the future regarding faith communities' participation in the redemption of cities in America.
Father, when we talked prior, you mentioned how conversations about racism often devolved into like two categories. And on the right, you hear a lot of rhetorical cliches or cliches of rhetoric, and on the left, you hear a celebration of diversity. Which, I wanted to get I wanted you to expand on that thought and why we end up going there, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think my experience is, I've got a very diverse community. It's a beautiful community full of lovely people, and they run the spectrum from right to left. And generally speaking, on the right, I'll run into, what I call racial cliches, right? People will bring up black on black crime. They'll bring up a whole sort of buffet of statistics or anecdotes or stories. Some true, some not true at all. They'll employ the rhetoric of law and order, not realizing it's frankly, racist legacy, and they're trying to get a grip on the situation, right? And they're trying to diagnose and